Welcome, welcome, every one of you, to our teaching center, to our assembly, as we come to study together. We had a wonderful time of Levitical praise this morning, and reading from the Torah, having all the children around the Torah scrolls and being able to read from Torah and from the scrolls, and I want to welcome each and every one of you here, and we want to welcome those of you that are coming. Come on in from YouTube and Facebook and any of those places that we're out there. Just come on in and welcome to study with us. Well, I want to also thank those of you that have sent us. You know, we have a small little congregation here. But we have a bigger congregation out there of people that we don't know. And some of you have sent us, and I thank those of you that are sitting at home studying with us, and thank you for the gifts you sent us, because, again, we are a small congregation. I think this morning we have, about 45, maybe 50 people here this morning. But those of you that are out there, thank you. You keep us going. And we also want to have you pray for our brother Richard. Richard Cottrell is recuperating from an operation on his hip. And now, this young man, Richard, he's been with us for many, I think he was 14, and now, I don't know, I don't know how old he is now, but he's getting up there. You're getting up there, Richard. But anyways, he's been cleaning our congregation for many years. And I'm telling people, it takes about 5 people to replace that one young man, Richard, because he does so much work around here. So I just want you all to pray for Richard. And Richard, I know you're listening. And so we love you, and we are praying for you. And if you need some chicken soup, give us a call. Welcome to Torah Unleashed, and welcome to Olive Tree Fellowship. This is our teaching center here in Albuquerque at 2621 Cagua Drive, Northeast. So we are on the uptown part of Albuquerque, especially those of you that are on YouTube. If you are driving through, please stop on a Sabbath morning or Wednesday night, or even during the week, give us a call. And we want to be able to minister to many people that have, and many people that have heard us are passing through between California or Texas or and different places, and they have stopped by, and we want to make ourselves available. Well, today the study is Ekev. Can you say it with me, Ekev? Yes. It means as a result of, kind of. It's Deuteronomy 7:12 to 11:25, and there are 9 teachings in Ekev. Every parashah, every portion, a parashah means a portion. And the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, are divided into 54 portions, or 54 parashot. And each one has different numbers of teachings within them. And in this one, we have the power of Yahweh, the ordeal at the wilderness, all these different things. Remember Deuteronomy. Now, let's look at kind of like a little philosophy of Deuteronomy. When you think of Deuteronomy, it's not chronological with the rest of the books. Deuteronomy is 3 sermons on the Mount. Deuteronomy is 3 sermons on the Mount. At the end of Numbers, they arrive right across from Jericho in Mount Pisgah. Mount Pisgah. Mount Nebo is right next to it. And they arrive at Mount Pisgah, and at Mount Pisgah, Moses gives 3 sermons on Mount Pisgah. I call them the 3 sermons on the mount. Now, think of Moses. Moses is 120 years now. He's been with Israel for 40 years. From the Exodus to now, it's been 40 years. And a lot of baggage, a lot of stuff has happened in those 40 years. And I was thinking about this in looking at Deuteronomy, just looking at the whole book of Deuteronomy. It's different than all the other books that Moses wrote. He seems to be, if you read Deuteronomy, I don't want to say he seems to be a little angrier. He seems to be a little madder. He keeps telling the people, remember. In fact, the word remember is found many times in the book of Deuteronomy. Remember, he's recatching. Remember, he's repeating everything that happened in the last 40 years. And we're going to look at some of these things very briefly, because from the 3 sermons on the mount, we're going to, towards the end, go in time to Yeshua and what I call the Messianic Sermon on the Mount, which is what Yeshua preached. Now, interestingly enough, Adonai spoke from the top of the mountain to the people downstairs and gave them the 10 Commandments. Remember, Moses was downstairs when the people heard the 10 Commandments. He was with the people. And Adonai spoke the 10 Commandments from there, and then tells Moses, come up and I will write them on stone. And he did. And today's teaching is about this. But it's interesting that in these series of 3 sermons, Moses keeps telling the people, if you don't listen, judgment is coming, and because this happened, then he judged you here. Don't do it again, or else you're going to get judged again. And so I kind of almost see a little frustration in Moses. If you read Deuteronomy, check that out yourself. And read it even with what I'm saying to you. But then we fast forward to Yeshua. And Yeshua, remember, brings in the Messianic covenant. Adonai gave Moses a covenant, what we call the Mosaic covenant. Now Yeshua brought the new covenant, or the renewed covenant. He renewed Moses' covenant. And one thing you're going to see today is that the renewed covenant, the covenant of Moses, as Yeshua brings it in the Sermon on the Mount, is a little stricter. You say, wait a second. That's the law. We're in grace right now. Moses spoke the law, and he was a hard. In fact, Marcion, who came up with the words Old Testament and New Testament, always said that the God of the Old Testament was a mean God. The God of the New Testament, the grace for loving God. And he kind of made Yahweh the Father and Yeshua the Son as kind of like 2 separate gods. And he had a weird theology. But what's interesting is that it's the opposite. Yes, that is Torah, and in Torah there are laws in the Mishpatim, Chukim, as we're going to talk about some of them today. And when Yeshua says, you've heard it said, he's going to take some from the 10 Commandments. He's going to take some from the Mishpatim, the Chukim. He's going to take some from even rabbinic thought and what some of the rabbis at the time said. But Yeshua is going to make it deeper. The new covenant is a little stricter. Yes, there's grace. Yeshua brought us this grace, but I want you to start thinking of that idea that the Mosaic covenant, as opposed to the Messianic covenant, the new covenant, yes, they're the same, but the new covenant, the judgments of the new covenant are stricter than the judgments of the first covenant, of what Paul calls the paleo covenant. Paul calls Moses' covenant the paleo covenant. Paleo, like, and from olden days, the covenant that came, not the covenant that is, not that the covenant is old, but the covenant that was from olden days. And that's what people get mixed up of old covenant. Remember, the old covenant, as we're going to see today also in this introduction, the covenant of Moses that Adonai gave us, he gave us for Israel, but then when the doors were opened for the Gentile world, there was some changes that Yeshua made. Remember what we said last week? 2 + 2 = 4? And we can't add or subtract. We can't add or subtract. But Elohim, from Joshua on till the book of Revelation, and even in the millennial kingdom, Adonai has added and subtracted and put here and put there. The book of Hebrews calls the new covenant, the renewed covenant, a better covenant. We have better promises. The promises of the Messianic covenant are better promises. And we're going to see this. And we're going to see the difference between the covenant of Moses, as we're going to just look at some of these ideas, and the Messianic covenant in the Sermon on the Mount by Yeshua. Let's get into it. The Sermon on the Mount of Yeshua is going to be a part of what we need to look at when you read, especially the book of Deuteronomy. Whenever you read Deuteronomy, make sure as you're reading Deuteronomy, you're also reading the Sermon on the Mount, and you're reading what Yeshua says. If not, we will either fall into one, that it's all about the Mosaic covenant, or we'll fall into the idea that it's all about the Sermon on the Mount and the new covenant. And both of those are wrong. We have to combine both of them. So I'm going to try. I don't know if I'll succeed today, but I'm going to try to combine both of them together. Of course, V'chaya Ekev Tish Merun et Hamishpatim. And saying that if you keep, if you observe, if you listen to the Mishpatim. Now remember the Mishpatim. The Mishpatim is translated as, some of your English Bibles probably translate this as laws. Some of them translate it as ordinances. Some of them might translate it as decrees. There are different words that the English Bibles, King James, and other Bibles use for Mishpatim, Hukim, and Idot. We saw that last week. That's a continuation from last week. But if you listen to the Mishpatim, if you keep the Mishpatim, or because you do this, Adonai will bring blessings. But if you don't listen, if you don't keep, if you disregard the individual laws and decrees and ordinances, Then there's going to be discipline. Adonai is going to discipline you. By the way, Ekev also means heel, the heel of your foot. The word Yaakov or Jacob comes from the root word here. And so Ekev is about commandments, head to toe, head to heel commandments. And we're going to see this throughout. And again, I'm just going because Deuteronomy explains what we've already explained in Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. Remember, Deuteronomy is Moses at the end of his life and before they cross, before he dies, is explaining what happened the last 40 years. And so he continues his second Sermon on the Mount, and he says, Shema, listen to the Mishpatim. And he talks about the blessings. You know, I will bless your people, your produce, your grain, your wine. I will bless your animals. Your. That's the cha at the end of every word that as I was reading, there was a lot of cha at the end. And you will be healed. In fact, watch what it says there in verse 15. Yahweh will keep all sickness far from you. He will not afflict you with those evil plagues of Egypt, which you have known, but will save them for all those who hate you. Now, here's a question. You know, today you have many of these prosperity teachers. All these name it and claim it people. I don't trust all those prosperity, name it and claim it. And they get verses like this. That's a promise. That's a promise. Adonai is going to bless everything, the fruit of your, there will be no miscarriages, he says there. And everything will be blessed. None of the plagues, none of the diseases of Egypt shall afflict you. They'll afflict your enemies. And so people get a verse like this and name it and claim it. Oh, I claim this verse. I know these, but wait a second. Notice that it's Ekev. Ekev. If you listen to my mishpatim, if you keep my mishpatim. See, one of the things that in mainline Christianity, with all these verses, promises, there's a lot of promises. But if you really look closely, those promises are conditional. Yes, there are many unconditional promises, unconditional gifts and graces, unconditional, unmerited favor. But the blessings, salvation is free, it's unconditional. But the blessings of living alive are conditional. In other words, we have to put some effort. We have to obey. We cannot disobey and look at the promises. But wait a second, we have a problem here. We also have the problem of living in, I guess, what we would call a smorgasbord theology or smorgasbord belief, behavior, and practices. We pick and choose. It's almost like part of the mishpatim, part of the mitzvot, the commandments, is also the Sabbath. So if the Sabbath, and let's just take that one, and we're talking about the Big Ten, the Ten Commandments, which is the covenant. We're going to see, if we get there, we're going to see that the Ten Commandments is the covenant. The Mosaic covenant is built on the Ten Commandments. If we take out the Sabbath, and have 9 commandments, and the Sabbath, from Adonai's point of view, must be kept? What if you don't keep the Sabbath and say, oh, I don't believe in the Sabbath no more. The Sabbath is done away with. Now we're into grace. Now we're into Sunday. He gave us Sunday, wherever that came from. We don't even know where Sunday meetings or Sunday get-togethers came from. Not from the New Testament, for sure. But they came in. And then you say, well, none of the diseases of Egypt's going to afflict me, and I'll name it and claim it, and no disease. But even most of these name it and claim it preachers that have died because of some disease, some problem, a breakup in the body, which is a result of sin, which is healed by resurrection. But yes, healing is promised to us conditionally. And this tells me that each and every one of us, not just the commandments we like or the teachings, the beliefs we like, but that we need to start learning to observe everything that Adonai has given us. Everything. Not pick and choose. Not decide, well, I like this, but I don't like that. But has there ever been a time when Israel lived exactly like this? And the answer is no. The answer is no. There's been times when there's been revival, and Adonai has blessed, but there's been times when there's been rebellion, to the point that even Adonai judged them by, as it says, I will kick you out of the land. And he did. 70 years in Babylon. Now 2,000 years have gone by with Israel not being in the land. And I'm talking about biblical Israel. I'm not talking about the current state of Israel from 1948. That's the state of Israel. But there is a biblical Israel. A biblical Israel. That is Adonai's Israel. And again, that's for another time. Now, one of the things that we must understand is that Adonai does want to bless, but blessings are dependent. Remember this personally. Blessings are dependent and determined by our obedience. Now, I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, especially in today's grace culture. Or I shouldn't say grace culture, but hyper grace. Because I do believe in grace, unmerited favor, charis, but I don't believe in all this hyper grace that's going around in many churches today, that you could do whatever you want and still think that, well, I'm being healed and I claim my healing. I could do whatever I want, but I claim my healing. No, we can't live like that. In 8:2, let's go to chapter 8, verse 1. Again, he talks about idols. All the commandments, the mishpatim, the hukim, which are the mitzvot, I enjoin on you today, you must keep and observe, so that you may live and increase in numbers and enter the land that Yahweh has promised on oath to your fathers, and make it your own. Remember how, and again, he goes another remember. There's all kinds of remembers over here. And one of the things that he says is, this 40 years was a time of training. It was a time of discipleship. A time when Adonai is teaching you some things. This was a discipline. Remember, discipline is different than judgment. Sometimes Adonai judges, but sometimes he disciplines. Judgment is because we've done something wrong and we need to pay the consequences. Discipline, when he disciplines us, it's a spanking so that we could learn to do better next time. And Adonai will discipline every one of us. I've been disciplined. We've all been disciplined, even by sicknesses, even by a lot of things are part of our sickness. The final judgment, by the way, which is not a discipline, the final judgment of the lake of fire is a judgment. That's not a discipline. That's a judgment. Adonai is going to judge thee. That's the sentence for rejecting Elohim by faith in Yeshua and before Yeshua, and by faith in the Abrahamic Mosaic way of life. And Adonai wants to disciple us. Watch what it says. I really like this verse in verse 5. Learn from this that Yahweh your Elohim was training you as a man trains his child, and keep the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, and so follow his ways and reverence him. Give him reverence. Here's where we have one of the words for worship, by the way. Reverence is one of the words. There's different words for worship. And here's one of them where we revere him, where we honor him, we worship him. And we have this, and that's an inside thing. In fact, I'm kind of going ahead from what I mentioned about a series that we're going to be doing. But worship could come from the mouth, but you don't need to use your mouth for worship. Just that inward reverence, that inward respect. Many times what we have on the inside, we want to give it to him, and we need to. We need to love him. But having that inward reverence, because remember, he's training us. We are his children. We need to be trained. We should be trainable. You know what happens to malcriados? You know, they can't be trained. By the way, malcriado, what does that mean? Mal is what? Bad or badly. Criado, raised up. In other words, he was raised up wrong. A bad boy in Spanish is he was raised wrong, which means the parents. The responsibility is in the parents, according to even our Spanish word, malcriado. But Adonai wants to train us so that we could follow him, so that we could reverence him, so we could be in right relationship with him. In verse 8, it's talking about the land. He describes as a good land flowing with milk and honey, all kinds of different things there. Adonai says this land is good, but there's temptations. And when you're living there, you know, and all these things are happening and you're being blessed, remember, the blessings are coming from Adonai, and he specifically says, it's not by me. One of the lessons that this parasha gives us in here is the idea that we must never come to that point that we tap ourselves in the shoulder and says, it was because of me. I was so smart in that deal. Boy, that deal, oh man, I took it. Or, I did this or I did that. No. Humility, and we're going to be looking at poor in spirit. Humility is what Adonai wants us to have in our spirit. We need to have a humble spirit. The word poor there means humble spirit. Again, remember. It's not my hand, it's Adonai. It's always Adonai. Thank you, Adonai, for the clothes on my back. Thank you for the food on my table. Thank you. A heart of gratitude. A heart of gratitude to Adonai. The victory comes from Yahweh, not from Israel's merits. In fact, there it specifically says, Shema Israel, listen. Every time you have the word listen in Hebrew, it's Shema. Shema Israel. Listen up, Israel. Today, you're about to cross the Jordan and go and dispossess nations greater and stronger than yourself. Capture great cities, a people great and tall, the Anakim, the sons of Anak. In verse 4, do not say in your heart, it is for my own goodness that Yahweh has brought me to possess this land, when it is for their wickedness that Yahweh dispossesses those nations for you. In other words, the Canaanites were there. Here comes Israel. It's not because you are a good people that you guys are the best. My chosen people, you guys are the best. I'm going to give you this land. No. That's not what it is. It's, you see these guys? These guys are wicked. They throw their babies in the fire. They sacrifice their babies. They throw their babies in pits. It's because of what they're doing and their wickedness. I'm going to get rid of these. I want the world rid of these cucarachas. I want the world rid of this people. In fact, a lot of people say, why did Adonai say, kill every man, woman, and child, even the babies? Remember, they were killing their own babies. And if he would have let them live, that would have continued. Yes. Because remember, there's generational, even today in genealogy, sometimes people 3-4 generations later of a murderer are still criminals. 3-4 generations of people that are righteous are still walking in righteousness. That's why we need to break every curse, everything from our, whatever we've done, wherever we've been, start breaking those curses. And so that our generations down the line will be blessed. We want blessed generations down the line. And Adonai could do it if we ourselves surrender ourselves completely. Then Adonai will change things. Change things as he's done so many times in his word and in many people. But one of the things that it says here in verse 6, be in fact sure that it is not for any goodness of yours that Yahweh gives you this rich land you possess, for you guys are cabezudos. That's what it says there. Son cabezudos. What's a cabezudo? Headstrong. Is that what your Bible's saying? My English says headstrong. You're a headstrong person. In Spanish we would say cabezudo, right? Yes. And one of the things that we see here is that it's because of Adonai. Adonai, by the way, last week we saw that Adonai chose Israel by grace. They're the chosen people by grace. chosen not because of who they are, but of what Adonai wanted to do through them. And of course, bring Messiah to the world is the major one. But to do many things through this people, Israel, to, in a sense, be his example to the world, to the nations of the world. Again, Moses intercedes, 9:7. Let's go to chapter 9, verse 7. There was a couple of things I wanted to say there. Remember, never forget, look again, how you provoked Yahweh your Elohim in the wilderness. And from the day you came out of the land of Egypt, you have been rebels against him. At Horeb, which is Sinai, you provoked Yahweh. And he goes into the story of the tablets of stone and how he had to break them and go down and had to do 2 more tablets of stone and a second 40 days and a second time of bringing down a second set of stones. Talks about the golden calf and all that incident. See, this is what I'm saying as I'm putting this down, I'm thinking, Moses seems a little bit frustrated with his people. You know, you keep doing this. You're not listening. Listen up. Listen, Israel. And we keep seeing that. Again, Israel sins. He gives them about the rebellion at Kadesh Barnea. He continues with the Ark of the Covenant, the choice of Levi, and how they were set apart for ministry. Talks about circumcision of the heart. And this idea of circumcision of the heart, remember, circumcision is the taking away of a piece of flesh. Well, our heart, which, by the way, our heart is the soul. Whenever we talk about the soul is in the heart. Interestingly enough, according to Scripture, according to all the way down, from when he made us, the life of the flesh is in the blood. The life of the flesh, Moses says, is in the blood. The word life there is nephesh. Nephesh is soul. Your soul is your mind, will, and emotions. So your mind, will, and emotions are in your blood. And your blood flows throughout your whole body, which means your soul is throughout your whole body. But your physical heart is the pump that brings the blood. And you could get even the tiniest little sticker, and little blood comes out. Stick yourself, and blood comes out. Your capillaries, your veins, your arteries, even the small, and that's where your soul is. By the way, that's one of the reasons why we are told not to eat blood, not to drink blood, because the soul of the animal or even a person comes into us, and we don't need another soul into our bodies. Adonai is very strict about eating and drinking blood. But it's important for us to know that our soul, our heart, is our soul. Well, all of a sudden there is flesh that grows around it. In fact, if you've killed an animal and you look at the heart and the organs, there's a lot of fat. We are told not to eat that fat, by the way. You're allowed to eat the fat and muscle, but in Torah we're told not to eat the fat around the organs. Not to eat the fat. You clean the fat off before you eat the organs. You could eat the organs, you could eat the heart and the organs, the liver, and all these, but you cannot eat the fat around it. that is unclean according to Scripture. Well, think of it. What is circumcision of the heart? It is coming and taking all that flesh, all that unclean fat around it. And Paul in Galatians tells us what that is. The works of the flesh. What are the works of the flesh? The works of the flesh are immoralities and drunkenness and divisions and fightings and anger and all these works of the flesh. But what Adonai wants us to do is circumcise our hearts, our soul. Let's get rid, our mind, will, and emotion, of all that fleshly stuff and get rid of it. And again, go to Galatians 5 there, and you'll see this is what we need to cut from the heart so that we could have our heart circumcised. Again, Jeremiah 4:4, Romans 2:25, go further on that. If Yahweh, our Elohim, Yahweh, our Elohim, He is the Elohim of Elohim, Elohei Ha Elohim. He is the Adonai of Ha Adomim. He is the Master of Masters, the Elohim of Elohim. In King James, it says God of gods, Lord of lords. And He loves orphans and widows. He loves the foreign proselyte. You know, the foreign proselyte is just as part of Israel. See, one of the things that a lot of people say, what is a Jew? Today people talk about, who's a Jew? Well, a Jew is anyone who follows Yahweh. You could either be a racial Jewish person or racial Israelite, a blood Israelite, an actual descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, from any of the 12 tribes, by the way, not just the tribe of Judah. There's people from other tribes we don't know. By the way, and for those of you that are here in our audience, this Wednesday night, I'll announce it again, but this Wednesday night, we're going to have a special showing of a movie called Quest for the Lost Tribes at 6 o'clock. And if you all could, we're talking about the lost tribes. And so we're going to have that special showing at 6 o'clock this Wednesday night. So be here. But one of the things that Adonai always allowed is anyone who wants to could join Israel. Anyone who wants to. So many people, in fact, a mixed multitude left Egypt with Israel. And people intermarried legally with Israel. There was a legal way and an illegal way that Adonai did not allow, but there was a legal way to intermarry with Israel. But Adonai loves anyone, a foreigner who joins himself to Adonai, a Gentile, who loves the Sabbath, who keeps the Sabbath. Yahweh is to be feared. We need to have a respect of Yahweh. And we must love Yahweh. Keep His mishpatim, hukim, mitzvot. And again, this is our personal responsibility. We are responsible for this. And they were responsible because He says, you were eyewitnesses. You have seen what I have done. And again, promises and warnings. You must keep my commandments. The land will be yours. Haaretz, the land will be yours. And it's the land of Elohim. By the way, the land of Israel does not belong to the Jews. It belongs to Elohim. And Elohim gave it to Yeshua. So the land belongs to Yeshua and to those who are His. Anybody here His? It's our land. But more importantly, the land does not belong to the United Nations or the United States or any other country. It belongs to Adonai. It's his land. And it depends on obedience to who's in and who's out, which tells you that today, because there is a Israel and a Palestine, so-called, in the land, that Adonai is still saying, I have my hands free from it. One of these days, Adonai is going to put his hands, and this is my people, this is my land, I give it to you. And for 1,000 years, it will belong to Adonai. Can you imagine a resurrection into the promised land in the millennial kingdom? We're going to be resurrected over there. Now, the Torah is the teaching. Is it law? No, there's laws inside Torah, but the Torah is not the law. It's the teaching. Yes, there's laws in there. And what are their purpose? The purpose of the laws, the mishpatim hukim, are for blessings, for rewards. They also tell us what sin is. We don't know what sin is unless the Torah tells us. It's our schoolkeeper. It's our teacher. And the laws of Torah sanctify us. In other words, set us apart. See, sanctification means to be set apart. Did you know when you don't eat pork, you're sanctifying yourself? You're setting yourself apart. Why? Because the opposite of holy or sanctified, kadosh, is not sin. The opposite of kadosh is common. In other words, the common people eat pork. Did you know that even Adonai says, in Israel, they used to have a lot of pigs. They had pigs in Israel. They still have pig farms in Israel. What are the pigs for? The purpose of pigs is to get all the food that's left over and they eat it so that all these bugs and all these things, diseases don't multiply. They are the vacuum cleaners of the land. That's their purpose. They have a purpose. But they are not to be eaten. And so to be sanctified means to be set apart. Well, set apart people, if you want to be set apart, you're uncommon. Kadosh, holy, means uncommon. They're common. Adonai even says you could even sell if you find a deer that has been ravished by an animal, you can't eat it. But Adonai said, Moses says in Torah, you could give it to a Gentile, they could eat it, because they're common people. That's why sometimes we get spam over here. Cans of spam, for food, for the pantry. Somebody gives us their spam. Well, we won't eat it, but we'll give it to a Gentile. So give it to, if you get anything like that, or somebody gives you, brings in a nice thing of carnitas, pork carnitas, and you can't eat it, well, give it to the neighbor Gentile. They could eat it. The purpose of Torah is not salvation. It's sanctification, which are different. We pretty much ran out of time, but let me go through the Sermon on the Mount very quickly here. The Sermon on the Mount is Yeshua's teaching. Now it says, and Yeshua sat down. Always remember, in biblical times, the teachers or the preachers never stood teaching. They always sat down. Remember Moses took his seat. Yeshua, when he taught, he sat down. Remember, he reads from the scroll and then takes his seat and then starts teaching. He goes up the mountain and he sits down and starts teaching. There is an idea of authority when you sit down and teach. Today, preachers stand, but in biblical times, they sat down. And he begins with the Beatitudes. Now, the word beatitude, again, a Latin word, the actual word there is Makarios. Can you say Makarios? Makarios is the word that we translate many times as blessed. Blessed are the poor in spirit. But the word actually means, oh, how happy. Be happy. If you are poor in spirit, in other words, if you have a humble heart, if you're humble, Adonai is going to bless you. Be happy because you're in your humility. Just be blessed in your humility. And again, if we turn to Matthew chapter 5 there, he gives us these blessings, these what we call in Latin Beatitudes, these blessings. Blessed, oh how happy are the humble in spirit. Theirs is the kingdom of Elohim. Oh, how happy the gentle. They shall have earth for a heritage. Oh, how happy those who mourn. They shall be comforted. Oh, how happy those who hunger and thirst for what is right. They shall be satisfied. Oh, how happy the merciful. They shall receive mercy. Oh, how happy the pure in heart. They shall see Elohim. Oh, how happy the peacemakers. They shall be called the sons of Elohim. Oh, how happy are the persecuted for the cause of right. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So Yeshua begins his sermon with blessings on different types of people. Now, when you think of that, we usually think of, oh, how happy are them. But what Yeshua is doing is actually giving us this taste of, oh, how happy we would be if we would have that attitude, that way of life. And these are the things that will come upon us when we have, and just like the first one, for example, if we would have a humble spirit, if I were to strive to have a humble spirit, what? Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Adonai is going to bless me. See, one of the things, again, in the new covenant is conditional. Again, sometimes we don't like that conditionalness. But it is. Oh, how happy are you when people abuse you and persecute you and speak all kinds of calamity against you on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven. This is how they persecuted the prophets before you. By the way, very important phrase, on my account. And later on, we're going to see this idea, on my account, on my account, on my account. On his account. If someone were to come here, and I've preached on the streets many times, and people have come against us. While I'm preaching on the streets the gospel, on his account, I cannot defend myself. I cannot defend myself because I'm on his account. I could defend myself at home. I could defend my family. I could defend my friends. We could defend ourselves if it's against us. But if we're doing something on his account, if we're persecuted on his account, if somebody is doing something because of him, then if they slap us on the right cheek, we need to turn the left. And so these idioms apply there also. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt becomes tasteless, what can make it salty again? It is good for nothing and can only be thrown out and trampled underfoot by man. This is talking about apostasy. We are the salt of the earth. Every one of us is the salt of the earth. But if we lose our saltiness, what does it mean to lose your saltiness? It means to become an apostate. When a person becomes an apostate, he loses his salvation. That's called the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. If anybody wants to study on that, we could work on that on a Wednesday night. You ask that question because that's a very deep and very important study. That's the only sin, the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit, that a person could lose his salvation on. You can't lose your salvation if you die in sin. If you die in sin, if you backslide and die in sin, you won't lose your salvation. A lot of people don't understand that. But if you deny the Holy Spirit, boom. And you know what? Once you lose your salvation, you could never gain it back again. Adonai saved you. Yeshua died for you once. Once and for all. He didn't die for you twice. He died for you once. Once you lose your salvation and you become a reprobate and your mind has been sneered as with a red-hot iron, there is no return. You cannot, see, a lot of people have this idea of you could be lost and saved, lost and saved, lost and saved. And some churches teach that if you backslide, you get lost and you got to get resaved. No, that's not true. That's where grace comes in. But if you apostatize, if you lose your saltiness, you're a goner. You are a light. You know, Yeshua says, I am the light of the world. I am the light of the world. But then he says, you are the light of the world also. Not only is Yeshua the light of the world, but he calls us to be the light of the world. There's so much in the Sermon on the Mount, and I've really gone out of my time here. But one of these Wednesday series would be a good time to do a whole series on the Sermon on the Mount. There's so much here. The new standard is harder than the old, I said. And Messianic life. Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7. And let's go ahead and stand. Oh, Father, if we could only spend days just studying your word. Father, I thank you for being able to just throw some teachings out there, some nuggets that people could receive. Father, that they may go home, and there's so much we miss every parashah. There's so much we miss. But what little we could get, and that we could continue our studies at home. B'Shem Yeshua. Yevarechecha, Yaveh vayishmerecha. Air Yaveh panav elecha v'chunecha. Asa Yaveh panav elecha. Vayasem lecha. Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yahweh lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day.
Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries. Thank you for joining us on our channel. If you have enjoyed this teaching and would like to see more, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell so that you can be notified when we have new videos. If you would like to support Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries, please visit us at olivetreefellowship.com or TorahUnleashed.org. We thank you for your past support and hope to continue with you. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day.